Yet another brand new power-packed episode of Tea Time with me, Chaiti Narula. We're standing right here at the Pune Golf Course, and one sport definitely making a beautiful synergy with another sport is horse racing. So from the golf course, we will discuss the business of horse racing in this country with my special guest today. But before that, let's tee off.
On the show this week, we have Vivek Jain, chairperson of RWITC.
As you know, horses being an animal, it is a gamble. You may buy the best horse and pay the best price, but the horse may injure himself and not race at all.
In news, Shane Lowry wins Portugal Masters. Jonas Blixt wins Fries.com Open for first career PGA Tour title.
So, Mr. Vivek Jain, welcome to the show. This is your third running year as chairman of the Royal Western India Turf Club.
That's right.
And let's talk about how the 3 years have been, because of course since the time you've come into the club, you've changed the face of horse racing, so as to speak, in the country.
Well, it's a tough club to run. Thankfully, I'm passionate about the sport and really passionate about our club. And I've been around for a while. But it's a tough 24/7 job, and it takes up all my time.
Talking about passion, you have a lot of passion with other sports as well. So how does it feel here being at the golf course here today and talking over a game of golf and teeing off here with me today?
Well, in view of the time that I have, I can't have racing and golf both at the same time.
Right.
But maybe destiny will play its part, and this may be the next sport that I'm going to take to after racing.
You know, BCCI is so cash rich in India, we've
Yes.
noticed. Horse racing, I mean, obviously is trying to get there, but how far are we from making this property and this industry as cash rich, or come even close to something to the likes of a BCCI?
I think the potential is enormous. Racing can closely match that of the BCCI if only we had a more friendly regulatory environment. Most of the race courses in India are heavily licensed by the state governments, by the municipal corporations. We've been really working hard, at least here at the RWITC, to talk to the relevant bureaucrats and to the ministers to take a more proactive, long-term view, and which can really be a cash cow for the government in times to come.
Is the government really being fair to the common man, considering the fact that the common man today is feeling the pinch of the heavy tax structure that they have imposed on the sport? And there is a distinction between betting through the Royal Western India Turf Club vis-a-vis the Bangalore Turf Club.
I think what the government has failed to recognize is that racing is not a rich man's sport. Yes, owning a horse, you need the money, you have the so-called rich who own horses, but it is the common punter who is responsible for the income of the club today. Gambling is a human instinct, so we are one of the few sports that offer a regulated, professionally run environment where you can actually gamble. And the moment the government sees reason and says that by lowering taxes, the revenues are only going to grow. Despite Bombay being a city of its size, of the wealth it has, the recorded betting turnover at our club last year was a paltry 200 crores. At Bangalore Turf Club, a city much smaller and nowhere near in comparison to the consumption and the incomes, was 1,200 crores. So you're talking of 600% more at Bangalore. And we have tried and tried and tried to convince the state that here is an example in our neighboring state which has been so successful. Give it a try. You know, if you see, there's going to be no magic wand that you're going to see the numbers go up overnight. If you see that the betting is going up and along with that your own tax revenues, we know you're on the right path.
On that note, let's tee off now and start the game.
Great.
In 2008, the facts show that $115 million is what worldwide was collected just through gambling in horse racing as a sport.
Right.
Where does India stand to this number?
Well, India is a fraction of a percentage of that number. If you see in Mumbai, if a punter plays 100 rupees on the toad, almost 30 rupees is sliced off and only 70 rupees is paid out as the payout.
Which means that the minute you put your money, you've already
You've
lost
lost 30%. And if you win a minuscule amount of 5,000 rupees and over, that attracts a tax at source of another 33%. So the economics are clearly against anybody wishing to record a bet through the official channels.
Since this is such a niche sport, which is very elitist in nature, at least people around the world think it's very elitist. Nobody really knows that it can be put to the masses as well as a mass sport, and you are endeavoring to go towards that vision as well to make it a mass sport. But for now, you've got so many corporates coming to the race course. Is it a challenge still to be able to pump money into the sport?
It's a huge challenge. And despite all the success stories, it is very, very tough. The sport is not selling on its own merit like cricket does or like tennis does. They're doing it partly for the visibility, partly because they're associated with the sport in some fashion. Either the company owner is interested in racing, or the breeders, or the real estate industry. But the time has come where the sport must sell on its own steam. The fact that we've been able to raise as much money as we have had, I would say, is entirely due to personal rapport that we have with some of our traditional supporters and some new ones who kind of taste it and then either continue or move away.
Talking about the money that you were talking about, that you have been able to raise money, and that also we are seeing at a substantial level, the amount is going higher and higher from what I see every year. What is the highest kind of stake money that we're seeing, and which race is it for which we're getting the highest stake money in the country?
Well, very obviously that remains the McDowell Signature Premier Indian Derby. I believe it is the longest continuous sponsorship of any sporting event in India and possibly in the world.
Over 20 years?
I think we are now touching 28 years, continuous run. And the race, I think in the coming year would offer a total prize money of over $500,000. I think possibly it would be the largest sponsorship for a single event across all sport in India.
So it is definitely a tough sport in this country to handle, but what is not tough is a chip shot that we're just about to play. Let's try that. That was nice. So we were discussing about stake money earlier. So what are the benefits of owning a horse in India where the stake money is so low vis-a-vis owning it in a Dubai or a Singapore where the stake money is really very high?
There's no direct economic benefit. It's the passion, the thrill of owning a horse. You know, for those who have owned horses, there's no greater thrill than seeing your horse flash past the post and leading it. It's really an unbelievable high. Because a horse is an animal, it's not a piece of real estate that it has a market value. So the price of the horse, there is no fixed price. When buying a horse, you have to look at the pedigree of the horse. Being a thoroughbred, the pedigree traces to 4 generations. You have to see how the other progeny of the same sire and dam have done. You have to look at the conformation of the horse. And that is very subjective. You take 3 trainers and ask them to see one horse. One will pass the horse as being a potential star. The others will undermine him.
Right.
So it is what you believe the horse is going to do well. And it's somewhat of a gamble, you know, the most moderate looking horses, horses with serious defects have turned out to be champions. But in today's environment, I would say an average horse would cost about ₹1 million.
On that note, let's take a quick break right here on Tea Time with me, Chaiti Narula. We are in conversation with Vivek Jain, who is the chairman of the Royal Western Indian Turf Club. When we return, we talk about this man-made experiment called Thoroughbred gone right.
Breeding in India tends to be cyclical and is based on how the Indian economy generally does.
That's a good shot, Mr. Jain.
Yes.
So we were discussing earlier about thoroughbred racing.
Yes.
Now this has become an industry ever since, and this industry is something that is booming world over. India, of course, also has so many stud farms. Are they even a profit-making business when it comes to India? Considering the cost of just acquiring a stallion or importing a broodmare when it comes to India is that high, what kind of margins are they working with? What is the kind of industry potential that we see when it comes to breeding in this country?
Stud farms in India is a very highly fragmented business. Like in the corporate world, you have those who are the very, very top, and there's a huge gap
Right.
to the middle and another huge gap to those who are at the bottom.
Right.
Also, breeding in India tends to be cyclical and is based on how the Indian economy generally does. Because the success of the farms depends upon the buyers who buy their produce.
Absolutely.
And as you know, the horse is something that you have to possess, and people usually use their surplus wealth to invest in thoroughbreds. And if their businesses are not doing well or the economy is not doing well, then the purchase of thoroughbreds goes down, as do the prices, and that affects the profitability of the farms. Also, India has suffered from an overproduce of foals. Last year, I think about 1,900 horses were born, which is way above what the race courses can hold. So there's now a conscious policy for the breeders to cut down on the number of mares that produce horses. And once the demand-supply kind of matches,
Right.
then that is what the industry has to strive for. And as you rightly said, the cost of stallions, the cost of maintaining a horse is the same, whether he's a top horse or an ordinary horse. So the maintenance costs are very high. And unless you can offset it by better pricing, it's always going to be a tough business.
So which
to
are these
manage.
top four stud farms that are doing well in the country?
Top two have very clearly been Usha Stud Farm, which is in the north,
Right.
just off Delhi, and the Poonawalla farms right here in Pune.
Of course, the Royal Western India Turf Club, as one of their latest initiatives, went to Singapore and had a Royal Western India Turf Club trophy in Singapore.
yes.
We'll talk about that a little later, but while I was there attending that race,
Yes.
I heard about the fact that somebody in the racecourse said Singapore is not far away from launching a horse fund.
Right.
Like a mutual fund or an
Right.
art fund, and treating
Yes.
horse like an alternative asset class.
Yes, yes.
How far is India from an idea like that to even toss over?
Unfortunately, years and years away. I think we have to first catch up in improving the quality of the thoroughbred.
Right.
We have to get our economics in order,
Which we can, because it's a man-made experiment.
which
It's
we
about,
can.
Yeah.
And we have shining examples right on our doorstep. But a horse fund, it was a dream. I think I will be well past my innings at this club when that comes about.
And also horse racing syndicates. Of course, horse racing is owning a horse is something which is done by the rich. It is something that is done by the top-notch corporates. Entrepreneurs are owning horses today. If the youth today, a youngster in the age of mid-20s or mid-30s, wants to go ahead and buy a horse racing syndicate is what he can make and end up acquiring one. Take us through how that entire process takes place and how accessible it is for the youth of today to acquire a horse.
I think syndicates is the way forward to get a taste of the business. As you know, horses being an animal, it is a gamble. You may buy the best horse and pay the best price, but the horse may injure himself and not race at all. The way to minimize your risk is to have a broad partnership, which means syndicate. We initially started with 10 individuals forming part of a syndicate. We've expanded that to 20. So theoretically, you can have 20 individuals who own a horse, get the same pleasure of going into the paddock when the horse is about to run, go and lead in the horse, name the horse, receive the trophy, at 1/20th the risk at both the capital and the maintenance. So it's a great way forward. We find an increasing number of syndicates. We have what is now also ladies only syndicates.
Right.
A group of 10 women get together and form a ladies syndicate. We have a royal syndicate where 10 royals have come. Maybe we should start a youth syndicate and encourage the 18s and over to own a horse.
So from classes, we're definitely seeing a paradigm shift going to the
Absolutely.
masses when it comes to horse racing.
It has to be promoted amongst the masses.
We were talking a little earlier about stud farms in this country. We've seen a local bred champion like in the spotlight doing really well. Which have been other horses that have been doing really well, which have been bred in India, which obviously again puts me to a second point, which is that Indian stud farms do seem to have the expertise to produce a class 1 filly like and in the spotlight.
We have had limited success abroad due to a variety of reasons.
Right.
The quality of the thoroughbred is only
Right.
slowly evolving. And also the quarantine rules worldwide make it very difficult for the export of Indian horses. The first to really make a mark internationally was a horse called Astonish
Right.
from the Poonawalla stud farms, who won a class 1 race in Hong Kong.
Yes.
And that opened up the interest for many farms and owners to send their horses abroad. There has been limited success. Adler won a race in the US, Saddle Up won in Singapore. But the problems associated with quarantine, with the procedures, with the approvals is so cumbersome that it has dissuaded many of the top horses from going.
So now we are sending Indian bred champions overseas now to race, but what we are also noticing very conspicuously is the overseas jockeys who are champions who are coming into India and racing. Why is there not a system in place where we are training our Indian jockeys to come to the level of a Richard Hughes or a David Allen?
We used to have an apprentice jockey school, but that didn't prove too well. We now have reinstituted a mechanism to train young jockeys. I believe today we have as many as 40 apprentices
Right.
who are now under training. As is known, jockeys have to have certain height and weight criteria, so
Right.
that limits the number who are eligible to be jockeys.
Right.
But I agree, I think we should possibly look at a more formal training mechanism, get down top-class international jockeys to train our boys, have more facilities like simulators,
Right.
show them videos of our the leading races worldwide.
And open up a lot of avenues for them to go abroad also and end up
Yes,
racing.
we do send them, but on a very sporadic basis.
Right, right.
So that clearly has to be done because India does suffer from not having too many jockeys at the top just now.
All right, on that note, we're going to take a quick break right here on Tea Time with me, Chaiti Narula. We are, remember, in a conversation with Vivek Jain, who is the chairman of the Royal Western India Turf Club. We will be discussing RWITC's initiatives internationally and discuss a bit more of the economics of horse racing that is changing in this country, a bit more in detail after this short break.
Race course is closed only at the time the races are run. Otherwise, the rest of the days, it's a free space. We encourage people to come and use it. Oh, that's pretty neat. Well done.
Nice. Welcome back on Tea Time with me, Chaiti Narula, and of course we're at the putting green right now, which is the strongest part of Mr. Vivek Jain's game. What is another strong part of his game when it comes to horse racing is the initiatives that the Royal Western India Turf Club is taking to make horse racing as a conspicuous industry in India. All that and more in the cafeteria with Mr. Vivek Jain. So after a pleasant game of golf, it's always refreshing to have some juice and unwind. What's another refreshing factor I've noticed is that Royal Western India Turf Club is going overseas quite a bit to promote horse racing as a sport abroad as well. Recently, you all were in Singapore with the RWITC trophy and many such other initiatives on the anvil. Take us through them.
It's been a focus area that we step outside our shores and step out of our comfort zone. One of which was the first hosting of the RWITC trophy in Singapore. I had sent a proposal to the chairman of the club that let's have reciprocity between clubs, and they had once agreed. So we had the RWITC trophy at the end of November, and in turn they will host the Singapore Turf Club trophy on the first Sunday in January. Also, I was recently at the Asian Racing Conference in Turkey, and we made a 20-30 minute audio-visual presentation on racing in India, which was attended by over 600-700 delegates worldwide, which was a great success. It helped us to showcase to the world what we are able to achieve and what we are doing. So the way forward is clearly that we are going to try and associate with several other turf authorities worldwide in order to take the first steps towards reciprocity.
Past 3 years, we've witnessed that you have been re-elected as the chairman of the club, and going forward, everyone really is putting their money on the back of the fact that you will be re-elected for the 4th consecutive year in a row. And we have seen that you've gone that extra mile to convert this into an industry and take it to another level and elevate it to another level. Take us through those extra initiatives that the club has done, which has set a sort of a benchmark for the sport in this country in terms of its economics as well.
We have made a very special effort to go beyond what we do well, that is conduct 7 or 8 races a day. Even at the cost of hurting some of the traditionalists, we have really walked several miles to not only showcase racing as a sport, but also to showcase the fantastic venue that we are privileged to have to run the sport, which is Mahalakshmi. And we want to send a message to the city that we want to make the property more inclusive for Mumbai as at Pune. And therefore, you have seen several initiatives that we have taken, such as corporate social responsibility. We had several race days run in aid of charities. The space is used as a public space. Also, we have a great public garden, free access. And I think a common misnomer is that the property is exclusive. It is for only our members, which is completely incorrect. The race course is closed only at the time the races are run. Otherwise, the rest of the days, it's a free space. We encourage people to come and use it.
So that is redefining the sport in many manners than one in this country. Also, there have been a lot of issues about media support coming into elite sports. Where does racing stand there?
In fact, that has been another success story, if I may call it, at the club. We have great media partnerships because we have seen the media as our partners. Racing, as I started off earlier by saying, suffers from a serious negative image, and the perception is all wrong. And we need the media to tell the story right. The very channel we are on now, Economic Times, ET Now was one of our first partners. We share a wonderful relation with the Bennett Coleman Group, who are our media partners for the telecast of racing.
Also with R1, you are redefining the sport in this country. What next for this?
Well, I think the ultimate objective would be to have our own racing channel. We see the challenges of showing racing on television. It is expensive. It needs corporate funding. I must sincerely compliment the Times of India group and program for putting their money where their mouth is and stepping in to promote the sport in all its glory. But I think once we have crossed this hurdle, we would ultimately like to have our own racing channel, as some of the countries abroad have.
Your company, DCW Limited, has a horseshoe magnet as the logo. Is there a racing hangover, or has it been there for years?
I think that's pure destiny and destined for my role at the club.
Coincidental?
Because DCW is a 60-year-old company, and maybe my grandfather thought of the horseshoe, which is a sign of good luck. And providentially, we stepped in. My father was chairman of this club some years ago, and my interest took off from there. And I think the horseshoe made it, the stars were destined that we'd have a role with horses and the sport.
So good luck to you with the horseshoe. Good luck to you in your endeavors when it comes to racing going forward as well. On that note, we're going to wind up the show. With me is the chairman of the Royal Western India Turf Club, Vivek Jain. This is Tea Time with me, Chaiti Narula. I will see you next weekend again on the show. Stay tuned to ET Now.